Chalam. We're reading in the writings of Ofam in the introduction to the book of Zar item 16 again the introduction to the writings of Bassam introduction to the book of Zar item 16. You can find the study materials in website, and you can also ask live questions through our websites. Anyone asking a question in the study hall is asked to stand up, hold the microphone close to his mouth and speak loud and clear again the writings of Rashav Bassam, the introduction to the book of Zar item 16. Therefore one might wonder if perhaps choice had been taken away from us, since we must be completed and come to the third state, since it is already present in the first state. The thing is that the Creator had prepared for us 2 ways in the second state in order to bring us to the third state. The first is the path of observing T and Mitifi commandments, as has been explained above. The second is the path suffering, since the sufferings themselves purify the body and will eventually compel us to invert our will to receive the form of a desire to bestow and cling to him. It is as a sage is said, if you repent, good, and if not, I will place over you a king such as Haman, who will force you to repent. Just said about the verse will hasten it in its time. If they are rewarded, I will hasten it, and if not, in its time. This means that if we are rewarded through the first path by observing, we must archon correction, and we will not need the harsh and bitter agony and a long time needed to experience them, so they will compass to reform, and if not in its time, meaning only when the suffering completes our correction and the time of correction is forced upon us. On the whole, the path of suffering includes the punishments of the souls in hell, but one way or the other the end of correction, namely the third state, is mandatory. Because of the first state, our choice is only between the path of suffering in the path of tar and MIT. Thus we have thoroughly clarified how the 3 states of the souls are interconnected, interrelate one another. Questions? Yes, about the 2 possibilities and 2 options. See each the path of keeping. The second is the path of suffering. I don't manage to understand how come every day I decide with myself that I'm going to take the path of tone with taking full responsibility, and at the end of the day I discovered that actually I don't understand, but I chose the path of suffering. How did it happen? How nevertheless do I manage to really persist in my choice of doing it by path of no? There's more in the middle between the path of suffering and the path of there is something. He talks about a person is guided by being pushed forward so that he doesn't fall asleep midway, so to speak. Yes. However, all in all, what's important for us on our path from minute to minute, hour to hour, we have to check ourselves. How do we continue to exist? Do we want something to come out of us? Do we demand these changes to happen, or whatever happens? No way. Whatever happens. We had a workshop before and we talked about it, that we have a way and we have a method. We're certain, I see in the friend such a true sincere desire. In practice, when we look back and check, what did we do on the path, we see it was completely different from what we were talking back then. Why? I don't know. All kinds of things take over, all kinds of desires that obstruct us. We don't even pay attention when it happens. We fall into it just like that. How do we realize the choice? Let's say we chose we're going by the path of, so to say, to get closer to the Creator, to discover him so as to bring him contentment. Right, so then what's next? How do we realize this choice, this plan in practice? First of all, the desire exists. We talk about it, we determine how we agree, and we also perform actions, internal ones as well as external ones, in order to advance this desire forward to support it. But then we discover that we fail in through pride and all kinds of things, like in a garden. So that's work. It's not a shame to fail. We keep going and we fail, and we keep going and we fail. Like little kids, they wait, they get up, make a few steps and fall, and then a few more, then a few more, until they begin to walk without falling. But most importantly, that we decide every day, several times a day, that we wish to go forward in order to bestow contentment to the Creator, and for that We are in a single group of thousands or even more, and we wish to get closer to the Creator every day. Yes, must you always in your explanations that we don't get there by suffering? It's not really a way to invert the will to receive to suffer. Yes, but in the end a person will have to shift to the path of tar, because this is where the path which is by choice through is awareness. He doesn't mention that, he seems to say that you do have that choice. You can choose the path of suffering, and according to the text, you'll get there. No, he refers to path of suffering when a person doesn't even take into account that he wants to advance towards the Creator by a path of light, meaning he just lives the way he lives, and we learn us each one nevertheless thinks, where am I, what am I doing, did I advance today, and so forth. Yes, for us it's intermittently, but I don't know, I'm asking how to relate, because here he writes that you have the path of suffering and the whole humanity can advance in this way and reach their goal. All of humanity advances by path of suffering. Yes, so they don't need a path of Torah. They can, through the path of suffering, they can reach the correction. No, that's not the purpose, and that's a very long and unpleasant path. We see how humanity keeps asking and wandering around and twisting and turning, trying to choose some clear plan that's easy and pleasant, and things don't work out. This is why it's odd. He writes, in the end we will turn the will to receive to the will to and adhere to the Creator. Through suffering can this happen? Yes, that ultimately the path of suffering also pushes everyone closer to a solution, so that takes years, thousands of years, and various systems that appear to them in their society through wars and eruptions of various kinds and so forth. All of that teaches the human, each and every human, that path is wrong. In the meantime, humanity is as if they're opposite it. It wants to get to the peak of development, technologically and in general in our corporal life, and in that they see the good future for humanity. That's it. Can we say that the whole of humanity, as he writes, can reach through the path of suffering and adhere to him, let's say, following thousands of years? But as an individual, I can't say now quit the path of tea and I'll just follow the path of suffering. No, usually doesn't happen to anyone. That a person on his own chooses and moves himself from this path to that path. Rather, that already happens according to one's fate and the root of his soul. Yes, the moment the person started to learn consistently as much as he can the wisdom of, does that mean he shifted from the path of suffering to the path of can? Well, yes, and now this is his destiny. He's already on the path. Often, yes, so when he writes, all of us choice is only through the path of suffering and to run, so the choice has been made already. In fact, well, each and every day that you further and further adhere to the actions and laws on the path of, that means you're doing it, you're developing in it. What is the choice of a person from the moment he entered the path of T to continue in that, to keep that each and every moment, to build himself as walking on the path? Is there some choice that he needs to make here? Yes, certainly here there is a choice. What is the choice? The choice is that the person wants to adhere to this path, of which means actions. Although he doesn't carry out these actions of pistol, he might fall back into the path of suffering, kind of be kicked out. Possibly. What does it mean to adhere to acts of Theo? That he enters a society, is completely focused on each friend and all the friends developing to the quality of, in order to bestow. Every person has his own fate, his own destiny, whether he'll be in the path of suffering or the path of every person as this choice, right? It's not his choice, is a choice that he's taken into. Those who come to study these things, of course, it's already their choice that has been made also because of what they had to begin with from birth, such urges, and that this is how come and choose. Is it their choice? Is it by the power of their development? No, it's the power of development. So let's say when we perform acts of dissemination, what is it that we want to do? Change someone's fate so that he will we take another path. No, we live in a time where each and everyone has a part of this new development of humanity, that and everyone ultimately has to reach spiritual development, and therefore we see that our amount is growing and Growing, can you shift people from the path of suffering to the path of Tura? Yes, how if they don't have the readiness for it? No, the willingness is there because the point in the heart is there. You're taking people who are hearing, who want to advance, who are ready for that to some extent. That's the kind of people that come to us, and we organize them in tens. It is men, women in our time. It's both. Yes, what does it mean to choose? What is this action of choosing? The choice is by what do I advance, and how saying will to receive. Naturally, I just want to enjoy all my actions with all of my intentions and goals. So this is the P of suffering. Ultimately, this is where it takes me, and to choose means to go against my desire. That's how it turns out, right? If I go against my desire to Joe, does that mean that I choose the path of Tur? It's not called like that, yet it's still insufficient. So what is this action of choosing? Choice means that I choose for myself a certain future that I wish to achieve, by which I will be in adhesion through these actions that I now take upon myself. To the upper force, we learned in many articles about this issue that there is some angel, they're called Layer Knight, and he takes the drop, and he says it doesn't say if it's righteous or wicked. He says everything except that. So what does it mean? The root of the soul. If for every drop we can decide if it's going to be righteous or wicked, what does it mean? The choice, there's a matter of that exists within each and every person, and according to that root, according to time, we still can't. But when we actually enter a certain degree in spirituality and onwards, then we'll be able to say about each and every such person at Hism already directs him towards correction, towards the final correction. So he does have a choice. So there are people in this world who have no choice of what to be righteous. They cannot be righteous. Yes, there are those, and there are others, but most are in a state where they don't know where they are, and that's what the wisdom of Kabbalah is working on. Okay, so this means that there is F and destiny, and this drop that we're talking about is just part of the drops, not all of the drops. Let's say, yes, I wanted to ask about the path of suffering, because he writes that the path of suffering also necessarily brings people to correction. Yes, it's just longer and unpleasant. What is this correction? Through the path of suffering, that in each and every moment, each and every stage where a new will to receive appears in the person. So forces influence that will to receive, and then person feels bad, he feels uncomfortable. Ultimately, he wants to escape and he can't, and there is this kind of struggle. Ultimately, he changes his mind, is his actions he goes through changes each time. So when if you reform, good, and if not, it will place upon you a king such as Haman, and you will necessarily be reformed. Force you to repent. What does it mean? That you will be forced to reform. Seems like you're always on a track where you're being reformed. Either you do it or it's done on you. Well, that's a difference. Either I myself know I need to make changes, go through changes, and I put myself, even push myself into that track where forces will influence me and shape me, or I don't want it, and I escape it as much as I can. But here and there I get blows from every direction until I reach a state where I have no choice. Still I get to a point where I have no choice, and then from that horrible state I get to a point where I agree with that state, and gradually I agree with the purpose of that state. But I grow wiser, and I begin to see that ultimately some end of development is ready for each and every person on his path. Both paths advance a person towards correction, or is it the path of suffering put you back into the path of Tur, and then you reach correction? How does it work? Basically like that, the path of suffering brings the person back to the path of Tur, but it depends on how long you're on the path of suffering, and there are many aspects here. It's a whole, it's an entire life it considered as a correction. Whatever a person goes through on the path of suffering is that also regarded this correction. Each and everything a person is in, whatever state, under more or less pleasant influences of the forces of development, all of that becomes included in him, and that's what needs to happen. K. Yes, was reading, if you repent, good, and if not, it will place upon you a king such as H. Who is this king such as Haman? Today in our time, first we have to reach such a state where we feel that our life is becoming unbearable on the one hand, and on the other hand we still cannot escape it, and so it's life that is worse than death for our generation being relatively spoiled versus this previous generations. This could be really horrible for us. Let's say we're beginning to feel it already, and the public, they don't feel it in this time. Let's say what's required, for them to reach this feeling that, oh, we're under pressure. There is a force here, which is called I don't identify. That I don't see it, I can imagine it, but I don't identify it. We aren't in concentration camps in some fears that really surround us from every directions, life and death. We're not seeing, God forbid, that our kids and our relatives are about to die. There are such things that, and besides that, we're talking about that just suffering that we can imagine to ourselves. What if we can't? Things can happen like an eruption of a volcano or some flood, and you couldn't even imagine what it could be. The Creator has many possibilities regardless of diseases and all kinds of incidents. So slice something that's still far away from us. It's not far. We don't summon this, and we are trying to advance still each and every day, trying to get closer in. Let's call it like in the middle line. Let's say, however this might happen, continues and writes here, but one way or the other the end of correction, I mean the third state, is mandatory because of the first state. So he brings me back to the whether I want to or not. I mean, I skip over the path of suffering. Yes, so it's a little confusing. No, even though there's a path that is not so good, not so pleasant, ultimately you move to a comfortable path and you advance there until the final correction. So in the end of the matter, I must go through the entire path in order come back to the path of for yes, we won humanity. How come one part advances quickly and another part goes through suffering that doesn't concern me? I don't know, and I leave that. I'm under many types of influence of forces. They all work on me, and what's important for me is to discover the forces by which I can be aimed at. The Creator. Do we have responsibility over humanity, those who have already awakened? I still don't discover that in practice. It's written in the books that it's upon us, and it is us should relate to the fact that there is suffering out there, and we revive the privilege to enjoy the path where there is the purpose to life. We are in the meantime in a state where we clarify by what forces and actions we can get closer to the Creator and influence the connection between us. We shouldn't engage in anything beyond that right now. No, we still do all kinds of actions in terms of disseminating method of connection to everyone because it's the Creator's will, but to a certain extent. I'm not asking about corporal dissemination because we can see the reach of our corporal dissemination. Maybe we don't see it for sure. Each one is doing the maximum he can. I'm talking about internal dissemination. What kind of relation should we have when we are here on the path and we really receive this huge gift? There's no doubt about that, and we see that there are those who did not receive this gift. The fact they didn't receive is not my responsibility. I didn't hand distribute it to who's going to get it and who's who won't. I have a goal. I clarify my role in that goal, and I try to do it as best as I can. Okay, I don't understand yet the choice here. When he asks, we should not ask was why was choice given taken away from us, etc. Then he explains something which very beastly. It's either this or that. If you don't choose right, you'll get blows here. You'll be bitten up, then you'll go to the other way. So where is the choice here? In that it's hidden. Wasn't hidden, then we wouldn't have a choice. Then there would be no choice. But because this path is hidden and the will to receive confuses us so that we go for what's better, to resting and having a good time, and that's it. And so we're confused, and so we're being taught more and more that we have to be. The fact that a person realizes each time he understands out of the blows that he has to choose another PA, and then he gets confused inside. Then again he gets blows, and then he repents, and again he gets blow, etc. Each time on a different level. Here separates between a person who chooses to go back to the path and one who chooses to keep getting confused. Is there such a choice even? Is it about the threshold of suffering, of how much you can suffer, or the root of your soul? What causes it? It comes to him from the root of his soul, that each time he either comes back or he's or disappears. That sits in the root of the soul. That's even more frustrating, because clearly this is even less of a choice. It's the root of the soul, but that doesn't prevent me first in from advancing in my choice. I still have to try to be the worker of the Creator and advance towards connection with everyone and so forth. Actually separates here between a person who now is able to choose and he succeed in adhering to the PA and one who flies away, and maybe he'll come back in this life or in the next life. What determines how you realize your choice inner feeling, how much a person sees that he has no other path, that he has to choose the Creator as their goal. Between one person who did that and another person who did not do it, what is really where we can say the person did it? It wasn't the Creator, the root of his soul. Well, of course it's the Creator, but ultimately we attribute everything to the Creator, but it happens through the person. Depends, and whatever depends on me. What else can I do so that we can say that I actually did something here? The main thing is the environment that a person is in, and all of it is thinking about how to advance by way of tour. Otherwise there's nothing to be done. All right, what can? Yes, it brings up questions. Friend also brought up, because it's written that whether one will be righteous or wicked, that is not being said in advance, meaning away a person as the way to justify the path and the Creator, or not to justify them, right? And never is. We all in all want to increase the importance and give confidence to the friends and reinforce them. It's very clear we're not going to find some checklist so we'll know exactly what to do, but something on way. How can we know? Like Ellie was trying to scrutinize, we're to search for the point where we can truly scrutinize what is our responsibility, what is our focused choice, our focused responsibility in always moving away from your egoistic nature. This is the path and anything but leave. Again, you want to, in the introduction, to test the beautiful item where he says, the Creator brought you here and your only choice is to get stronger. Yes, correct morning. So from both of these ways, the will to receive suffers in a way of fact thing, because the vessel is a labour that the Creator prepares for us. So actually it's only about the goal, to constantly have the importance of the goal, or to be in gratitude for this, for because the will receive suffers both ways. It just that on the second way in hastening we say thank you, like Raz used to say suffer, right? This is a yes, hear him. Yes, is there a connection between the external state we receive, like you said, I don't know, quakes and whatever, and the path of a light or path of suffering? Again, let's say a person goes through some unpleasant bad external situation, but he can relate it to the Creator. He sees his ADV that it advances him. Is this path of suffering or path of tar? If it influences his choice on the way, then it is the path of tea. He also described many stories of Kabbalists who were in suffering in a horrible way. Question is whether a person in the path of Tura, the states that will come to him won't necessarily be just internally unpleasant. They could be externally unpleasant, yes, but he just can relate it to the Creator. Yes, right, is that it? What we are also are in a difficulty of doing spiritual work, and that eventually creates a prayer. What's the difference between the choosing the spiritual path and the path of pain? One exists inside of the other. Choosing suffering, yes, no. How to get out all of these things? They all are included in the track of the spiritual work. Turkey N. What is the difference between the suffering of one who came to the spiritual path and one who didn't? One who reaches the spiritual path, so he already knows where he is and what he needs to choose, and one who is not in it yet. They just keep going. They keep going. There are many people even here in different frameworks we have who still are confused. They still don't quite know what is operating on them and how they need to choose their states and what to long for in every state, and so on. These are scrutinies. They take a lot time from women. La 24. Why do we always have to suffer to reach correction? Does it always have to be that way between the good and the bad? We exist actually, and our whole life are we drawn to good in different forms, and we run away from the bad, and so this path also, as well as the goal, they flow for us in good or bad. This is our existence. White K from New York too, he writes that the suffering itself cleanses the body. How does that happen? Because the body is the will to receive, and the suffering that work on it they change it. Woman, York, New York 3. I see that suffering causes a person to be bitter, angry, desperate, even pushing people to commit suicide, including younger people. How does that correct the person? Well, this is for some of the people, and other people actually advance specifically for suffering, and they discover new things, and they learn, and they work and attain something. So suffering is necessary. The feeling of a lack, what is it that we have next to the feeling of the lack? This is what matters. Do I have a vessel so that through the feeling of their lack and I extract from this situation something which is eternal and important and exalted and great? It's not that I just bow my head down and I just keep working like I can, like a beast. We who study the wisdom of and don't put enough efforts and maybe even are lazy in the work, does it shift us to a path of suffering, or it's a scrutiny we have to go through to see our weak spot and reach a prayer to the creature I didn't quite understand? Ask who study the wisdom of Kabul, and we don't pay enough attention and put enough effort in the work. Does it shift us to the path of suffering, or is part of the scrutiny we have to go through to see our weakness and reach a prayer to the Creator? We are still in a scrutiny, still scrutinizing. Woman, PT 6. Does it mean that the choice is only for those that according to the root of their soul they're supposed to reach the goal in this life cycle and not leave the path midway? Yes, the choice is mostly clarified in. Then last question from Belows: how is the suffering of Israel different from the suffering of the nations of the world? Well, it's a more external vessel versus a more internal vessel, so it's according to how each and everyone is. But in our framework, we see that from all over the world, from all their nations, men and women come to us, and they all begin to come into place with respect to the purpose of creation and with respect to the upper force, and this is how we advance on the path. No, yes implies that my choice is in my attitude to reality. How do I relate to reality? Do I agree with the Creator or not? That's eventually my choice. Let's say so. Yeah, there's still writes that there's a path of hastening time, which is instead of the path of suffering, or in due time. What is the definition for us for how to focus on and be in hastening time as much as possible? We want to be in henning it if we want to reach a state where our force of Baal will cover the whole world, that the force of bestow will govern people's actions. We do all kinds of actions here internally that are regular actions. How do we make our work there more qualitatively towards hastening time as much as we can each and every day we connect more? We have congresses according to our situation and the state of the world. We try to be connected. Thank you very much. Whatever we can. Again, what's the connection between this and the two systems we discussed before? There and purity and impurity. It's that on the path of impurity we have to perform actions also on the path of holiness in order to discover where we are and invite or draw forces to correct where impurity, and also how to work with holiness, and on the path of holiness we reach more quickly the result. Meaning in both systems there are these two possibilities. No, maybe I'll be more specific. The question is whether path of light and path of suffering lead you to one of the systems, or within both systems there's a path of light and path of suffering. Path of two versus the path of suffering that exists before every person, and by choosing we scrutinize in which way we will advance onward. That is all which step we're going to take forward, and this is what leads us to one of the systems. Or yes, this is what leads us to the system. It's not that they're really two systems. It's written such a way, but really it's all one system. No, sorry for making it maybe more difficult, but I don't really understand the choice, because who's going to choose the path of suffering? Who's going to choose such a path? Where is then the choice? What I try to see, what I also understand from the whole lesson, is there's a state a person receives, and now he has to change direction, and it will always be some suffering I'm a will to receive, and I want to work against it now, so I'm going to receive some suffering somewhere, but the question is, how do you accept them? If you accept them, you know to advance on the right path, then you are grateful for these suffering and you accept them. Almost so, that leads me to Al's first question in the lesson, that you start the day saying, I'm going for the path of, and ultimately you discover that you're on the path of suffering somewhere. The will to receive has stolen all your work and you felt into that suffering. So what kind of criticism person should have in order to always choose the right path? Individual criticism or monitoring. Can you expand? I need to monitor myself, meaning what do my operation which I'm going to perform, what is it going to give me? What of my thing, what do I see? What is it that I want to achieve? To discover, make it more difficult, because it sounds like an intention I'm supposed to do before the action and not some inspection afterwards. I don't understand what you're asking. I'm trying to understand the inspection, self-inspection one should have and say, did I go in the path of suffering or the path of, and then choose, like Ra explained, the path of. Again, so how do I make this inspection? I inspect it according to what I'm scrutinizing right now. What did I want to scrutinize? Where I am. Yes, so what did I end up with? Suffering. Let's say it was suffering, so what should I do? Now I have to work on my intentions again and go to the friends and do the actions all over again. Okay, I don't even, I'm trying to understand. I'm answering from okay, but practically I don't understand. I'll try last time, sorry, I'm trying to understand the difference between self-inspection of the person about what he did and what he went through, and the intention when he started the action. When I start the action, I'm supposed to have to make an intention that it won't be for myself, that it'll be to bestow contentment to the Creator. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I discovered that I wasn't really I wasn't really doing the work. I fell into some bad feeling, suffering. Now I'm supposed to self-inspect, right? What's the difference between that and the intention that I work on? How do I what can restrict the gap? You didn't even realize or actualize your intention exactly. So how do I do the right self-inspection to not fall? Now you inspect what you wanted to do versus what you actually did, and now you plan your next action accordingly while correcting the mistake that you made. Though, whoa, okay. Gee, we say that if a person, basically everything is predetermined, but if a person can relate his life to a teaching with the Creator, like the D's example, if at the end of the day I say I was in order to receive, I couldn't do it, but the Creator reveals it to me and I cling to that, and it's like I chose the path of joy, and if I eat myself up, it's a path of suffering. Can we look at it like that, where here is the above reason is that in practice I see within reason that I'm on a path of suffering that's within reason, but above reason I related it to the fact the Creator revealed it to me, and I'm going to advance from here on. That's not about reason, so you reached a new reason. Let's say no. Well, yoff. Yes, T on the concept of the root of the soul, a person who has a clear feeling about, well, the root of the soul, or something at least in terms of realizing the root of the soul, and he feels a great gap between that root of the soul, something that pushes him, and actually realizing it. What's the advice to realize of one's root of their soul? Add here to the friends, the person doesn't have a soul, he receives it by connection with the friends. The friends can help him in that, not only to help him to establish his soul, a person as he feels that he needs, and he should be on the next stage. He already feels it, and he sees the conditions that seemingly prevent him from reaching that stage. What should be his attitude to that which prevents him from realizing him? Well, of course he should relate to these things in a negative way, that he wants to destroy them, to skip over them, he doesn't use them. Well, maybe he does, but this is in very rare cases, so the request to cancel the disturbances is correct. It is correct. Yes, why not? To okay, thank you. Well, yes, to clarify the matter of choice, our progress does a new layer open up. A person discovers what's his choice each time from one degree to the next. Yes, okay, it says they were awarded. I will hasten it. It sounds like a passive action, like buying a lottery ticket, and I see that I won 1 million. I thought you have to be active also, even the lottery, to actually buy the ticket and prepare yourself. Also an action. It's also sounds like we could do more. We're Sitting here waiting to see if we were awarded or not, if there's more to do. Proactively plenty for you to do. You haven't even started yet, so why is it right they were awarded? Why not make an effort? And I will hasten it, because it doesn't depend on a person seemingly. There is an intervention of the Creator. Here, if you do what's necessary, according to the root of your soul, then you get progress. Thank you all. Right? Yes, what's the connection between faith above reason and the path of Torah? Relation only by faith above reason can you advance step by step on the path of Torah. What is it exactly in the 10 or in every moment in life to be in faith above reason that you are going forward according to the spiritual laws? Can thank you. Are you told that there's a lot more to do and we haven't started? What is what's more to do that we haven't done? Haven't we done yet have a connection to each other? Do we have between us all in our society? We have tents that are clear, tents that are connected in such a way that they feel the influence of the Creator over them. Well, there are definitely efforts towards that. Efforts, yes. So what kind of efforts more we need to make that we haven't made before? This is also something that you need to discover. He told them, we haven't begun. What haven't we begun to do? Internal connection between you, which says what that each one should feel, that there should be a place in his heart for all of the friends. And what does he need to do for that? He needs to open his heart and invite them there. How does he open the heart? To a desire and a prayer. Desire is definitely there. All the friends are here for this. So what needs to be strengthened or refined here for it to happen? The heart will hear it. How do you make it here? For that, we need prayers that the Creator will open the heart, and he will let the person feel how much his friends are truly entering his heart. Yes, question from a friend. What's the difference between a person who is born to this path and grows to choose the path of two, and a person who develops in the path of suffering until the point in the heart develops again? What's the difference between a person who was born in our community, let's say, into this path, and a person who develops on the path of suffering until his point in the heart develops and he comes here? We can't compare them and us scrutinize these things, because these are things that are related to the whole of reality. Each one has his own way. Is there an advantage to one who was born here on this path? I would say that yes, he has a greater chance to know and understand and feel what wisdom of offers a person. Actually, each one should realize that he is equal to everyone. One who came on his own has more choice than one who was born here, or both. Well, didn't choose, of course. Both of them didn't choose, but it's more correct to say that a person does come by himself. One who's born here immediately enters this path of tar, or he also has to move from a path of suffering to a path of tar. No, for him it's a particular unique question is whether a person who came on his own has a greater deficiency. One who went through life before he came here and absorbed a big deficiency before even coming to study the wisdom of Kabbalah. He comes with a different deficiency, different kind of, carries a different kind of load. Yes, it's different. Okay, what are we going to do next? Yes, good morning, Rob. Thank you. What should a person feel when all the 10 is in his heart? Is it like the Rabash article where he describes the change from feeling the friends is far away until he melts into them? Must speak. Okay, enough. Look, where are we? Now we are before the second part of the lesson. What did we go through? We tell the friends before we move to the next part. We read item 16. Yes, 16. Okay, we can move to the next part, which is Rabash article, or we have questions from the world CLE, but we can also transition. We will move to the next part. Friends, before we move to the next part of the lesson, we remind you that on March 23rd, we'll have a global unity day for pouring called Increasing Joy. Just a week from now. For details and registration, go to convention. C.1. We'll move to the next part of the lesson. Before that, let's sing a so sp for oh. We're going to read in the writings of Habash the article. What is he who did not toil on the eve of Shabbat? What will he eat on Shabbat? In the work again, the writings of Rash article. What is he who did not toil on the eve of Shabbat? What will he eat on Shabbat? In the work, the stud material is on. You can ask questions. There is Well, what is he who did not toil on Shabbat on the eve of Shabbat? What will he eat on Shabbat in the work? Our sages said, they said to him, Lord of the world, give us in advance, and we will do it. Give us the now, and we will observe it. The Creator said to them, fools, he who toiled on the eve of Shabbat eat on Shabbat. Sabbath, he who did not toil on the eve of Shabbat, from where will he eat on Shabbat? We should understand this in the work. 1. What is the toil on the eve of Shabbat? What is Shabbat in the work? 3. Why must we toil in order to obtain the quality of Shabbat? It is known that Shabbat is called the conclusion of the making of heaven and earth. That is the purpose of the creation of heaven and earth was for Shabbat. In other words, the revelation of his desire to do good to his creation when it is revealed to all is called Shabbat. It follows that he Shabbat he rested, ceased from all his work, because there is great work to reveal to all that his guidance is in the form of good and doing good. At that time there was no more work to do in the quality body of week days, since work means turning unholy or weekday into chaos. Holier, holiness means chaos. Holy when he separates himself from any vessel of reception and does all this work with the aim to bestow, as it is written, will be holy for I am holy. This means that as the Creator is the giver, creatures too should achieve equivalence of form in corporeality. We see that a person works only for sustenance. Sustenance means foods on which the body nourishes. This means that the foods are what he gives to the body, both corporeal life called eating, drinking and so forth, and spiritual nourishment called honor, knowledge, power, governance, etc. In order to acquire these nourishments a person must toil, otherwise he will not get it. This means that the nourishments one yearns to receive in return for his work are like a meal, and the toil is like the preparation for the meal. Clearly one who is unfit to toil does not receive corporeal nourishment or emotional nourishments. In other words, someone wants to be given something the giver will not give unless the conditions that the giver requires are met. For this reason, called in order to bestow, man was created with a will to receive for himself, but the giver demands that he will work for him, regarded as all your works will be for the sake of heaven. Otherwise, if the giver gives to the receiver into vessels of self love, everything will go to the side who robs the abundance from his holiness. Means that what he does is for the sake of the Creator. If the intention is for himself, it is called disparity of form, and it is the opposite of, however, since it is against nature both in mind and in heart, it is called labor, and this is the preparation for the meal. In other words, the fact that a person must aim to benefit the Creator and not himself in order to obtain the clean vessel called in order to bestow is great labor and toil. This is called the preparation for the meal, and the meal is called Shabbat. It follows that the work is considered week days when we must, in order to remove the secularity in man's heart and place there instead, means adhesion with the Creator, and secular means separation from the Creator. All the work is to place over the will to receive the intention to bestow time. A person adheres to the Creator, as was said, you will be holy for I the Lord am holy. This he obtains Kimvel, that can receive what the Creator wants to give, the delight and pleasure called the meal. This is the Shabbat meal, and this is the meaning of he who did not toil on the eve of Shabbat before Shabbat. What will he eat on Shabbat? Dur Shabbat gave an allegory about working for the sake of the Creator and not working in order to obtain self-benefit, but to do everything for the sake of the Creator, or all the abundance will go to where this is brought in the book. Fruit, a great benevolent king who did not need any work to be done for him, wished only to delight his country folk. He sent out a decree to all the people in the country, excluded, and dedicated a place in his palace for that purpose. He stipulated explicitly that it is forbidden to work outside the designated place, and their reward was with them in the place where they worked, where he prepared for them lush meals. When the work began, thought that the king had prepared overseers to examine their work so as to know who worked for him and who did not. Yet the king and there was no supervision, but they did not know about the wondrous invention he placed a sort of foul powder in their delicacies and confections, and as an antidote he placed a healing powder in the workplace. By this supervision happened by itself. Those who loved him kept the king's commandments meticulously, as well as worked in the designated place, and thereby inhaled the healing powder. When meal time came, the taste of the confection was such that they had never before tasted. Naturally, they praised the king, but the lowly ones who did not understand the king's merit, for which they should love him, once they saw that there was no supervision, they did not observe the king's commandments properly. When meal time came and they tasted the confections, their mouth filled with a foul taste due to the above-mentioned powder, and they cursed and vilified the king accordingly. It is impossible to feel the delight and pleasure found in Torah and commandments because of the restriction and judgment that were set up. So it is impossible to feel any light in vessels of reception. In vessels of reception there are only darkness and death due to the disparity of form between the light and the cle. Therefore, when we want to feel taste in and with vessels of reception, there is no taste. There in vessels of reception we can only feel taste in corporeal pleasures, where the sweetness is revealed when a person obtains the corporeal pleasures. This was done on purpose, so that creation would exist, so there would be something to enjoy even before a person obtains vessels of Bel, which are called Kim, vessels for unification with the Creator, meaning that a person does not become removed from the Creator when receiving the pleasures, and in order to have something from which man receives vitality and pleasure, we learned that because of the breaking of the vessels, a thin illumination shines, a tiny illumination of that shines within the clipot on which all of the corporeal pleasures feed. Therefore, in corporeal pleasures a person can have pleasure and high spirits, but as for filling real pleasures, which is the primary intention in the desire to do good to his creations, there is the powder of concealment, hiding, and darkness and bitterness, and there is no flavour in, and that is the hiding and concealment are the bitter powder that is placed there by the correction of Thyme. Sum he placed the healing powder in the labour in R and MIT, that is, you find the healing powder precisely in labour in, and why specifically in the labour, and mere engagement in is not enough to receive the healing powder to cure a person from the bitter powder in their meal. To understand this, we must first know what is the powder that heals the bitter powder that the Creator placed in their meal, and what is the labour in by which we can find a place to obtain the healing powder. It is known that the main labour is when we work against reason, that is, when a person does not know why he must work, and he must work against his reason. This is very difficult, and it is called labour in, and however we should understand why a person must work in against reason, which is very difficult, and not every person is capable of this, and why we cannot work in within reason something that everyone can do. The thing is that we must know what is above reason, which is called labour, that we must labour in engagement in, and the point is that man was created with a desire to receive for himself, since there was a correction on this will to receive, so there would not be disparity of form upon the reception of their abundance, but that even during the reception of the abundance he will remain in the called equivalence of form. Hence restriction and concealment were made. This means that when a person wants to receive the delight and pleasure in vessels of reception, he sees no light at all, but only darkness, called a space devoid of light. However, one must fashion for himself vessels of bestow, regarded as he's merciful. So you are merciful. How can we obtain this? It is done by labour in R, and when we engage in, and in order to obtain vessels of bestow, this means that a person does not want to receive any reward for his work in, and but his reward and payment will be that he will have the strength to do everything for the sake of the Creator, and not for his own sake. This means that if a person observes, and in order to receive reward to obtain the light and pleasure for his own sake, this is called observing, and within reason, that is, the body does not object to this, since to the extent that he believes he will receive from this pleasure for his own sake, this is called within. Reason Manas says about this quality when teaching little ones, women, and uneducated people, they're taught to work only out of fear and in order to receive reward until they gain knowledge and acquire much wisdom. They are taught that secret little by little. From the words of Mayas we see that there are two aspects to observing, to one for one's own sake, which is in order to receive reward, and not to not work above reason to the extent that he believes in reward and punishment, since he takes everything for his own benefit. This work is called the work of uneducated people, which is within reason. In the work this is not considered labor, although the general public does regard this as labor in, and that is he engages in, and not in order to receive any reward for it. Rather, he works completely for the sake of the Creator. This is against reason, since reason obligates that a person will work for his own sake. Therefore, when he says he's observing in order to thereby receive power to work only for the sake of the Creator and not for its own sake, the body begins to resist with all its might and yells, "What are you? Crazy? Are you trying to revoke yourself before the you tell me what will you get out of this?" This aspect is considered great labor because he must fight against his own body when justice and common sense side with a body, and this is as this is its nature. It follows that this is called labor since it is above reason, and the body does not agree to work for the sake of their Creator. Sin is regarded as engaging in as labor, that is by his engagement in he wants to be rewarded with the quality of bestow, which can be obtained precisely by learning in the form of labor when he engages in with the intentions that are our sages said. I have created the evil inclination, I have created the Torah as a spice because the light in it reforms. This means that he sees that he has no love for the Creator, but rather self love. He cannot do a single movement for the sake of the Creator because the body objects to it each time he overcomes, yet he is not progressing, rather it is to the contrary. After all his labor to overcome, he sees that he is regressing rather than progressing. This labor gives him room to pray that the Creator will help. It follows that each time he sees he is regressing, he is actually progressing in his prayer, because as he sees he is far from their goal and can therefore pray more wholeheartedly because he sees the place of danger. This means that he's afraid that the bad might overcome him and make him think that he should escape the campaign. That is, the body makes him think that this work was given to people with strong characters and not to the general public, although now he has taken upon himself to walk on the path of truth, meaning for the sake of the Creator and not for his own sake. But since he is not succeeding and is regressing, he's afraid that the bad will overcome him and make him think within reason that the body is right, as he sees the reality that he does not doubt what the body tells him. This work is for chosen few. This makes him pray to the Creator from the bottom of the heart to save him from this danger of having to escape the campaign. He says, "Lord of the world, please help me now while I still have the strength to pray for you since I don't know what will happen later. There may be no one to ask you for help. For this reason," he says, "Lord of the world, help me while the soul is still within me. I'm afraid that I might die later and decline to a place of separation, which is despair, and there is no faith in the Creator, there not even a tiny measure so as to make it possible to pray to the Creator. Person who falls into a place of despair no longer asks for any help as long as one has confidence that he will emerge from his state. He still works, as in everything that is in the power of your hand to do that. Follows that the fact that he wants to work and be ill causes him labor. This in turn causes him to pray that the Creator will help him and to believe in the sages who said, "He who comes to purify's aid." It follows that the healing powder is found in the labor that is his labor in order to achieve that he later obtains, causes him to have the ability to enjoy the meal called delight and pleasure, since he already has vessels of bestow which remove the concealment and hiding that are on the meal. That concealment pushes away anyone who wants to taste the food and he says about the meal that it tastes bitter. By this we can interpret what our is just said. Fools, he who toiled on the eve of Shabbat will eat on Shabbat. We asked what is the Shabbat meal in the work. We should interpret as our sages said while creating. The Creator said, what is this? Like it is like a king who has a tower filled with abundance, but no guest. The meal is called a tower filled with abundance. This is called that. This is after the completion of the work, which is obtainment of the vessels of this dough, which is all the labor during the week. Days also called secular days in Hebrew. The week secular days are called 6 days of action, which is the making of the vessels that are capable of receiving the general meal for the whole Israel. This will be at the end of correction, which our sages called Israel, as they said that the creation of the world was for Israel, as it is written in the beginning. God created, and there is no beginning but Israel, as it is written, the beginning of Israel. In other words, the tower filled with abundance is for the whole collective. Individually, the meal is when a person corrects his actions and comes into a state of Israel straight to the Creator. This means that all his actions are for the sake of the Creator called El. God. At that time he's rewarded with the meal. Individually, at the end of correction, all the individuals will come with vessels that are suitable to receive their meal. As the Creator said, he who toiled on the eve of Shabbat will eat on Shabbat, as mentioned in the allegory above. The healing powder, in other words, through labor, and there in the labor they will find the cure that revokes the restriction and concealment lying over the meal. Accordingly, we should interpret what was presented in Shabbat. The emperor said to Rabbi Joshua, why has the Shabbat dish? Why has the Shabbat this such a fragrant scent? We have a certain spicy said called Shabbat, which we put into it, and that gives it fragrance. A fragrance scent. He has give us some of it. And he replied, to him who observe the Shabbat it is official, and to him who does not observe the Shabbat it is of no use. Although the literal meaning concerns he who observes Shabbat, but in the work we should interpret observing Shabbat through the words as he as his father kept the matter. That is, he sits and waits and says, when will I be able to obtain the vessels that can receive the Shabbat meal, whose scent is fragrant, since the Shabbat meal is called delight and pleasure, clothed in the 613 in the form of 613 commandments. Depose, as it is written in theme in each and every. A special light is deposited. This is regarded as meal. We can receive this specifically after the work and labor, as it comes by observing 613 mit as can, meaning tips how to achieve the quality of the light in it, reforms it. For this reason, the meaning of one who observes it is observing the 613 mit in the forms of counsels how to achieve bestow. For precisely in vessels of bestow can we enjoy the Shabbat meal, for theum and cons have been removed from the delight and pleasure. This is like the above said allegory about the healing powder. The powder found in observing the 613 counsels heals the bitter powder that lies over the delight and pleasure. For this reason, if we do not obtain the vessels of found in through the labor, the concealment over the delight and pleasure remains. By this we could interpret what our sages said, you can trust your landlord to pay you for your work, that the reward of the righteous is given in the future. This is perplexing, since we must work not in order to receive reward. Why do they say no, that the reward of the righteous is given in the future? Accordingly, we should interpret that our sages explain to us what is the reward of the righteous in the future. That is all the labor they give in order to receive reward. We are told what is their reward in the future. It is in the future, meaning that they will be rewarded with working only, so that all your works will be for the sake of heaven, which is vessels of best. For this they give all the labor in order to obtain in the future in than the ones they have now, which are vessels of reception. In the future they will be rewarded with the vessels of Beo, and this is the meaning of the reward of the righteous is in the future. In the beginning of the article he says, someone who has no talent can't exert himself. What talent do you need in order to be rewarded? For spiritual food, can I tell you are on the street at work in all kinds of places with many other people. Why do they not have their privilege of coming to study, and you, instead of sleeping or resting or making profit, making money, which everyone understands, instead you come to some lesson to hear that you have to work completely in order to bestow? Where's the logic in this? According to what I understand, it's the awakening of the point in the heart, and awakening from above the point of the heart, and they don't have it. This is why you are doing what the Creator has given you for now, and on top of it you develop your own vessels. The ignition, the trigger for this whole thing is certainly the Creator, but afterwards you continue, and you continue by getting up at night, standing, participating with the friends. This is how we come to spiritual reward. Thank you. Can yes, other work, according to what I understood from the article, is to exert in order to bestow contentment to the Creator and not receive a reward, and the path is that you advance by seeing that you can do it less unless the body resists. You feel that he's far from attaining that ability. So the question is, well, that's where the vessels of Baal start formulating. Yes, so what happens from here? What is the work from this moment? When those vessels start formulating, what should you do next? What should you do next to continue working with vessels? Now, what does that mean with intention? To bestow, that increases the vessels. It's working with different fulfillments. It enhances the vessels, and with the intention, from the intention to bestow, you come to a state where you begin to know the Creator to whom you are giving, and you come to adhesion with Him according to the equivalence of form, and in this way to know the world you're in. Until we attain the vessels of bestow, we're working in one direction to work, not in order to get a reward. So the question is, should we then, or can we even in parallel work into two lines or two styles at the same time? Vessels of bestow then receive. In order to bestow, we can work with vessels of only when we come out of the system of reception and enter the system of bestow, and then we have vessels of bestow in order to bestow, and afterwards receiving in order to bestow us. Well, receiving in order to bestow means that we're also working in bestowing in order to bestow, meaning it's both of them together happening. Yes, how do we do it? That's what the environment lets us. It's still not for us. It's still not for us. People will get confused. Ken, yes, gave the allegory about the king that put the powder on the food, and then the food didn't taste good, and whoever it so then feel it. So those actions to bestow demand concession on the fulfillment and the will to receive. Yes, when we come out of the lesson, we leave with a tank of gas that gives us the forces to do actions. Sometimes that feels enough. Sometimes you can give up on things for the actions of bestow. The question is, how can we increase this tank that will give us the forces to do the work throughout the day? Again, the question, how do we increase the tank of gas that we come out of the lesson with? So throughout the day, we'll have the forces to overcome, to relinquish the fulfillments and the will to receive, because it takes a lot of forces to do. This is through envy, lust, and honor, and by looking at the friends and being impressed by the correct desire and intentions that they have. I heard that what we're lacking is a connection between us. This form of work in the article, what should we do in order to reach connection? Here, pray to have a connection between us. If we were united, our vessel, our spiritual vessels, even with what forces of bestow that exist in each one, which are very small, but if we were to collect them, then we would achieve a spiritual result. When you say to pray, it's a big word. It has a lot of meanings. If we try to see it in our daily work, it means that every friend has to try and make efforts to overcome. Let's say he's not successful. So that's a prayer. We have to connect all that together in the morning lesson. Yes, that's what we're lacking, this connection. It's lacking. Why we are not really trying, yearning, or our tendencies toward the Creator to connect together so we can help each other, push all of us together to the Creator. So that means that now each one of us is doing work alone, not thinking of their others seemingly. Yes, what is the Shabbat that he writes about? That he stops his work, meaning the upper one stops working. What should we do? What's the equivalence on our behalf? That he will stop working, yes, and we will work instead. Instead of again we are doing his work. Instead yes, and by that we feel that we're working with him, yes, and that's called Shabbat, yes, and a different topic in a few minutes. In about half an hour we're going to go to a Shabbat meal. Is that for us in our state? Now what is this meal? How do we prepare ourselves to that meal when we can think, perhaps even feel that we are all of us together in one meal which connects between us, unites us, mainly that it connects, and that's different than the connection we have to ask for in the lesson, yes, because it's a meal that the Creator said that we can seemingly come to him and be in his meal and connect. Thank you, God. He says that the healing powder is in the exertion that when he exerts into reach for her sake, for that helps him enjoy the meal. So this exertion belongs to the Creator or the created being. To the created being we have to labor in connection between us in order to reveal the Creator through our tendency, proclivity toward connection, and ask of him, demand of him to take care of you, send to us. So what does it mean that the healing powder is there? What's the special thing about it that in this labor we obtain the healing powder, which is that force that unites us and elevates us above our egos, so we become all of us in, and that's something that's concealed until you don't really enter that exertion, so it's not revealed. We have nothing with which to reveal it, this exertion or the powder. It's attaining a vessel bestow, yes, and we can say that the place where he spreads that powder is in the 10, yes, so only to exert here, that's the place, and exert above reason, that's the way to do it, yeah, between all of us can. Yes, it's written that a person has to make vessels of bestow for himself. He uses to make vessels, it means they're prepared for us. We just have to reveal then, yes, okay, yes, it's not clear about the intention. We say that intention is what I want to attain as a result of an action. So is an intention also a desire? An intention is the intention. You can say that, well, for us for the time being it's like a desire. So what do we want to obtain from the right intention? Well, that depends on the intention, what you want to obtain to achieve. Why you asking me? So why it's a desire, you can't understand the difference. You want to get something, well, it's for myself, for yourself, or not for yourself, depends. You didn't say it's for yourself, so that's what I mean. What do I want to attain by having the intention to bestow? You say what you want to have. You should say it. How would I, how do I know? You want to have an intention to bestow, and then what? I don't know, because I want it, so it's not clear to me if it's to bestow. Why do you want it? What will you get out of it? When I came to the path, I guess I came for egoistic desires, and I have the influence of society, so changes, and it remains in my desire in my vessels. It doesn't feel that I'm even advancing to something or to come out of my own desire. So you're hoping that it'll still help you wake up, transcend, or ascend. Okay, yes, said I, that's it all of a sudden. Well, when does the meal taste bitter, and when is sweet? When the desire or the intention of the emanator and the intention of the emanated being become equal. Women PT4. What does he mean when he writes that he observes the what other commandments are there except for connection? They all fall into this action of connection. Women PT8. How can a person keep himself from entering despair and lack of faith through their society? PT33. To turn despair from the path to purposeful despair that will help us exert in connection and prayer. This is our work. Simple. Stop reading. It's just repeating from lesson to lesson. Yes, it's as if what we studying now, what we just read, it's like opposite supposedly of what we read in the previous lesson, where there was very clear suffering or Torah, and here there is the suffering. Perhaps it seems that way to you. It's good. What I can connect exertions and prayers and our intentions. What do we need to do for them to be connected for all of you, at least in the 10? Well, that's through prayer as well. What connects them into one prayer? Connection of the hearts, which happens what before each one prays. So the connection connects the prayer. So what's the connection between connection and that? Each one has his personal exertion, the personal work he does. Each one has a deficit. What does he want through the deficiency? What does he want to obtain through the deficiency? How can he increase the deficiency? And then he uses the connection of the deficiencies. How do you connect them? What do you need to do for them to connect? The Creator does it. So what are we asking for? Each one has, like you said, has a small exertion towards be. So what else do you need for the Creator to connect all these exertions to check himself? Does he have any more deficiencies besides the deficiency, the desire to connect? And that's what you need in order to advance the connecting. The desires, they'll be common, yes, because this is what you want to happen, but that still comes from an individual. Yes, collect all those deficiencies and raise them to the Creator. What does it mean to gather them? That's what is unclear to me. When each one influences the other in the 10, each one makes sure the 10 has that deficiency to gather them. Yes, that common general deficiency of the 10 will influence the Creator. Can, yes, continue that question. How can we get our exertion more precise? Make it precise. There's either for my benefit or for the Creator, and we are already know and feel that if I want to do something for the Creator, it's only through the friends I need to be. So through them, this understanding whether for me or for the Creator, that something he has to do I don't understand, it's not clear to you. The intention of the prayer, we want the Creator to change her intention, because otherwise we'll remain for our own benefit. Then what that's like a precise thing he has to do. It's like an operation. So how could we reach this action in one prayer, everybody together? That he just corrects the intention for once he does it, and that's it. I can't dictate to him what to do. What when it happens, but what do I have to do? Constantly awaken him through my deficiency. What's the force of the group? Connect your deficiency with the deficiencies of the group, and it will be more effective. Something I have to do, or everybody I don't know, everyone speak to them. This is why we are in this corporeal world where we can approach one another physically and agree between us. We want to unite our deficiencies and raise them to the Creator. This is already an internal emotional action. Afterwards, spiritual, we have to feel the state that only the if we ask all together, only he can do this correction. Yes, no. Well, about deficiencies, every person feels a deficiency. Now, if I feel a certain deficiency, so I need to check it, to scrutinize it and compare to the that I learn has to be with me, and ask for that gap that the Creator will cover it. Yes, and that's the work actually. Yes, no. Well, he says here that in the weekdays a person takes out that the secular part of his heart brings spiritual in there. So he says that those who engage in the Torah, there are ones that just do it. There are those who really exert, and it's great war to do that. He exerts with the body. So for us, should there be a difference whether we have the weekday or the Shabbat, or do we also have a feeling that in a war, and that there's no difference between the weekday and the Shabbat, the way we study, and for the time being we don't feel it, we don't distinguish it in the meantime? No. Do we need to try that there will be a difference? It's not like we need to do it, but when we are received, when we find the changes between one and the other, we'll be able to say that this is secular and this is Shabbat. They are states. Now he says that in the weekdays that there's a great exertion. We have to be in a state of great exertion and fight the body, that a person has to wage war with his body, and on behalf of the body there's the justice and the mind and his nature. Supposedly in the war a person has to do against his body, and I wanted to ask, what does he mean on the other side? Who's fighting the body? He has to summon these forces from above, from the Creator. On the other hand, there supposedly the prayer that the Creator will help him fight his body. Yes, how does a person make the separation that he divides himself into two and then wages war against his body? Can I try and you'll understand at one point is as if he's speaking himself in third person. He sees he's afraid, he's asking it's supposedly not me, it's him that is now dealing with some other him that is fighting in self. Yes, how do we get to such a feeling that the lesson every day here is like a type of war? That it depends on the person. Some are asleep, some are awake, and some are absolutely in the areas of fulfillment. That it's like there's two ways a person expects a reward. There's like an approach that now we're working, and in the end it'll be good. Tomorrow we'll get to the end of correction, and there's an approach of our fulfillment from the fact that every day we get an opportunity to wage this war, that this is our life, that a person can go between his W to receive to something more exalted. I don't know. Yes, so what's a better path to walk in? Both of them together. How each day they should be as new in her eyes last ones, and continue in this way in and stop in the struggle, and also to expect that one day there's going to be a big change, not one day. Today I see, thank you. Well, right, said the king, saved a special place in the palace. That's where the work should be. When me and my friend work at the same place where the king united him for the war, and I get an impulse to help my friend, to support him. So my question is, I'm asking the upper one to give me an ability to receive a vessel to help the friend get an extra degree, or am I asking an example for a deed without the mind, but just an example for a fool who just does the work and gives a friend an example, and by this everything will come to the friend on his own without me being even present? Or should I be the one concerned about him, and through me the friend will get the forces to remain in the same place that the king prepared for the work? B, you'll go through all these states one at a time, but when I'm with a friend and getting a big impulse to help him to be a good friend of this, that he'll remain in this place and not come out of it, and I'll have the forces to keep working. So what am I focusing on in my request to the upper one? Help your friend advance forward toward the purpose of creation as much as POS possible. Thank you. That's it. What else do we have? We have an announcement about Unity Day that we're having next week. This is probably from Yek, so in exactly another week from today we're going to sit not here but downstairs in the hall, and we're going to connect on all the screens in our mutual home for enjoy. That will happen on March 23rd next week. Let's go over our schedule as we see it today. So what we're going to have is this: at 7 we're going to gather for a bout, and we're going to start broadcasting from the open studio at 8:00 a.m. We'll have the social time that the group is going to prepare us for the lesson at 8:30 to 10:30. We have the first lesson with the love about the happiness from Unity. 10:30 to 11:30 is a break. 11:30 we have a meal that and Ave together will make us happy, all of us. 12:30 to 1:30 another break. 1:30 to 2B are going to prepare us with a social time as a preparation for the lesson. The lesson from 2 to 4 about touching, then for a break, and 5 to 6 we have a festive meal that the groups of and well lead sitting in that Unity Day is in the permanent tent. Then the meals we will mix together, but registration payment is all the friends that are coming here. You have to sign up. You have to pay for it on Wednesday. The prices will go up March 20 at midnight. All